Thanks everyone for joining today. It's great to see so many of you with us today. This meeting's being recorded, and I think we can make a start. As I was saying, if you can stay on mute when we're talking, and just so that there's no background information, but the chat's open. If you have any questions, let us know, and we've got a question and answer session at the end as well. So let's get started. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. So today we're going to explain who the OfS is, who the Office for Students is, and what role we take in student life. We're going to explore together how we can work together to improve the student experience, and how we support you to deal with student complaints, highlighting where we can help and helping you to understand when you might need to go to a different organisation. And we're also really keen to hear from you about what more you think we can do in our role as the regulator of higher education in England. As I mentioned, we have some pre-submitted we'll have a question and answer session at the end, and we've got some pre-submitted questions that have come in already, which is brilliant. But please do add other questions as well, either in the chat or by raising your hand as we go through. A couple of the questions that have come in so far relate to freedom of speech, and we're proposing to not talk about freedom of speech today because we've got an entire student debrief on the topic of freedom of speech coming up on the 16th of October, and we think it would be better to spend a longer length of time talking about that topic with you. In the meantime, there's lots of information on our website that would be useful to you, including a guide for students on freedom of speech. So I'd recommend you go there in the meantime and then sign up for the session on freedom of speech in October. I've got some of my colleagues with me today, and they're really looking forward to talking to you about the OfS and what we do. I'm just going to do some quick introductions. So my name's Suzanne. I'm the head of student equality and welfare, so I look after regulation in relation to access and participation, mental health, disability, and I also work with colleagues listed here on our approach to engaging with students. Then Julia works on student information and ways in which we engage with students. And Lizzie is a leadership development officer, which is a type of graduate internship scheme where colleagues rotate around different roles within the organisation. And Lizzie has been working on our approach to engaging with students most recently, and has done a lot of work in helping set up the event today, working with our colleagues across the organisation on that. Charlie is head of regulatory portfolio, and she works on student participation. She was previously a student rep herself, and so we're going to be hearing from her about her experience, and she'll be coming back in the question and answer to answer some of your questions. And Noah is another leadership development officer, and they also were a student officer, so they're also going to be talking about their experience in that regard. So they will introduce themselves a bit more, I'm sure, as they get started, but welcome to all of them, and I'm looking forward to today. So I'm now going to hand over to Lizzie, who's going to run through an overview of the OfS for us.
Just unmuting myself there. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's a really exciting event, and we hope we can answer all your questions and give you a bit of an idea about who the OfS is, what sort of areas of work we cover, and our goals as an organisation. And as Susanna said, if you would like any further clarification on the points raised, there will be a Q&A at the end of the session where we can answer all your queries. Can I have the next slide, please? Great, thank you. So firstly, I want to briefly cover the legislation that established the OfS. I won't dwell on it for too long, as it's maybe not the most invigorating read, and you can always read more about it online. but it is really helpful to understand what the OfS was set up to achieve. So the Higher Education and Research Act, otherwise known as HERA, is the piece of legislation that sets out all of our main responsibilities and how we should carry them out. In effect, HERA tells us what to do and how to do it. Some of our main responsibilities under HERA include protecting providers' autonomy, promoting quality, greater choice and opportunities for students, encouraging competition between providers, promoting value for money, protecting and promoting free speech and academic freedom, using OfS's resources efficiently, effectively, and economically, and adhering to best regulatory practice. We also receive some guidance from the Department of Education, which we can also use to inform the direction of our regulation. Next slide, please. So, as you may or may not know, the OfS is the independent regulator of higher education in England. But what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be a regulator? And effectively, a regulator is an organisation that oversees a particular industry or sector. So, for example, you might have heard of the Financial Conduct Authority, otherwise known as the FCA, which is the UK's financial services regulator, or Ofcom, the regulator for communication services in the UK. And the main purpose of a regulator is to use its powers to bring about positive change. In our case, that means seeing that students get the best out of their education experience. And finally, a regulator is typically created by government legislation. So in our case, that would be HERA. Next slide, please. So before I joined the OfS, which would be about a year ago now, I was studying my undergraduate, and to be perfectly honest, hadn't really heard of the OfS or what it did for students. However, I had completed the National Student Survey at the end of my final year, and I'd heard of the Teaching Excellence Framework, otherwise known as the TEF, to assess quality teaching. At university, I was also always keen to hear more about how my institution was treating students fairly in industrial action, as this was something that really affected me and my peers, and what my uni was doing to help tackle harassment and sexual misconduct. As incoming student representatives, you might have also heard of new freedom of speech requirements coming into effect this autumn, or you might have already been involved in helping your institution with their access and participation plans. Just out of curiosity, has anyone heard of any of these areas of work? You can sort of react in the chat or just drop a yes in the, yeah, I'm seeing that people are great. Wow, there's a lot of people who've heard of this, so that's really great. Because the OfS is in fact involved in all these areas of work and so much more. So the OfS will likely pop up in many areas of your work without you even realizing it as a student representative. Even if you haven't heard of some of these things yet, you're likely to come across them throughout your term as a student rep, so don't worry. And we are really keen to work with you to bring about the best for your students in all these areas. Can I have the next slide, please? And yeah, that's great. As you can see here, we regulate over 400 universities, colleges, and other higher education institutions in England, ensuring that each of them are meeting their obligations to students. I like the reaction there. This means we're looking out for students across a really wide and varied sector, whether that be larger universities, or further education colleges, or even some more specialist providers. We work with institutions registered with us to maintain high quality teaching and ensure the rights of students are protected. To become registered and then obviously stay registered with us, providers must meet a minimum set of requirements, or what we call conditions of registration. And you can find out a bit more about those on our website if you are interested. These set out the baseline for what we expect from providers to deliver a high quality and accessible education for students. Next slide, please. So over this autumn, we will be rolling out our brand new strategy, which sets out our goals as an organisation for the next 5 years. As you can see in this image, we've developed 3 priorities, first of which being quality. This strategic priority sets out that students should receive high quality education, and prospective students should have a range of high quality options so they can make informed decisions on where and what to study. The second priority is on the wider student interest, and it aims to ensure that students receive an education, that whatever the education they were promised, and that they can benefit from a rich and rewarding higher education environment. The third priority focuses on sector resilience, and that aims to maintain a financially resilient sector which is run by effectively governed institutions, so students can reap all the benefits of their higher education. You will also see that equality of opportunity surrounds all 3 of these priorities, representing how it's part of everything we do as the OfS. You will hear much more about our strategy in the next few months as we release it to the sector, but for now, I will pass back over to Suzanne to introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Lizzie. That was great. So now Julia's going to talk to us about how we engage with students.
Classic, didn't unmute myself. Here I am. Hello. Thank you to Lizzie and Suzanne. That was brilliantly set up for me to come in now. I'm of the demographic that loves an emoji. You might know that. So, and I feel quite competitive. Lizzie had a lot of emojis. I'm, wanting a few myself. So, if whenever you feel like it, just go for it. Makes me feel loved, and yeah, you're there. It's also a really odd situation. I don't even know if I know you there. I'm talking to all these people. You might know me, I might know you, but there you are with your emojis. I feel I've won. Yeah, here we go. Right. So I want to talk to you about how do we engage with students. This is obviously one way that we engage with students, talking to you here today. And this is something that as an organisation, we want to do a lot more of. And, that's something that is under my remit. So hopefully you'll enjoy today and come back to other events. Next slide. Right. So we've set out, there are many ways that we engage with students, but this is just an example of, the ways we can identify. If you look at that first column, so you've got the Student Interest Board, representatives on the OfS board, and Disability and Higher Education Advisory Panel. These are all more formal ways that we engage. These are set out, it's what we do, and there's a process. I think we might have a Student Interest Board member in the audience, but I won't ask them to identify themselves. But, I think these are things that we've set up so we can have that formal interaction, so that they can guide us and they can show us where we can go, that sort of thing. This second one is the insight mechanisms. So this is more, it is formal, but it's also more light to touch. So, for example, we do the heartbeat surveys, and these are, I'm really sorry, my cat's joined. She's ignored me all day, and now here she is. So with heartbeat surveys, we have 5 questions, and they come in at the beginning of your term and at the end of the term. And this is just to sort of get a check about how things are going. We also have explorations, and what we do there, we identify areas that we believe or you have told us are areas that are concern or issues for students, and we do deep dives, and we look for information and supporting documentation, that sort of thing. There are temperature checks, which these are short surveys that move from just very instant things that we ask for information, and then we do focus groups. And we have the student debriefs. The student debriefs have been set up. They're new this year, and they're very similar to this. Some of you may have already attended. They're online. We ask a question. Suzanne has referenced the next one, which is the freedom of speech, and it's allowing you the opportunity to tell us what's important. We've done three, we've done, well, more than three. We've done one on AI, one on financial cuts. They've been really well attended, and we've got some really good information from them. And then there's the National Student Survey. I won't ask for a show of hands of who filled it in, but you've all been invited to fill it in at some time as undergraduates. So that's something. Discover Uni is where we get, oh, honestly, I'm really sorry. We get information, and she's now switched off the brightness of my computer. There we go. Sorry. So Discover Uni, hopefully you will have, I didn't, I asked too many of these emojis. Now I'm getting everyone the laughing emojis. It's a classic. So with the Discover Uni, we have data, we have information. This is to guide students as to where they go next with their journey. It's a lot of information, and you should be able to find everything that you ever want there, but that is a resource that is available. The student submissions for TEF and APPs, some of you may have already been involved in this. This is where we ask the providers to submit information, but we also ask the students. And we appreciate that we're asking quite a lot. You've got courses, you've got, coursework, you've got exams, that sort of thing. But it is really important that we hear from students as well. Notifications, I'll come to that later, but that is how you raise concerns as students, or as anybody really, about the quality of your provider to us. So notifications is how you get information to us. We also have student news. This is a news bulletin that you sign up to. It's interesting. It's something that we do. If you're not signed up, please do sign up and have a look, see what sort of thing we have in there. And then social media, we do X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I think we're on to the next slide, which is we could do more. So now that you're used to interacting with me and my cat, if you want to put anything in the chat here about, this is what we do at the moment. If we can go to the next slide and we can see how you're going. Tell us your thoughts. What are we missing? What could we be doing? These might be things that you can start writing now here, and might be things that would take a lot of planning. You think this might be difficult, but actually we've got time. It's something that it's like, I guess in a way it's my job to listen to these and see what we can implement. So tell me, this is your chance. I've got a few things coming in. I don't know if there's any more thoughts about what we could do to work with, working with students, but also working with yourselves as representatives. This is the first time for a while that we've done something like this. If this is useful, we can do more. If you think, gosh, I'd love to hear Julia whittling away again, that's the sort of thing that we can do more of, if that's of interest.
Julia, I was just looking at some of these comments, and it sounds like there's quite a lot of support for an opportunity for people to meet in person, and maybe to go through some of the more complicated pieces of regulation, or what that means for university policies in detail in person. So that sounds like quite an interesting idea. And then there's also a really simple challenge that's been raised, which I know is one we talk about a lot. I'm being sarcastic. It's not simple at all. It's really complex. About how do we reach all students? So this session is particularly aimed at student representatives, and we think talking to you as a group of student representatives is a really important part of how we help all students to understand the OfS and our job. But I think it would be really great if any of you on the call have any ideas about how we can also communicate with students more broadly, or whether there's more we can do to help you help all students to understand that there is a regulator protecting their interests. Because I know, Julia, that's something you and I talk about a lot, isn't it? How do we reach all students in the sector? Hattie has just suggested an interactive video. Well, we do have a video, actually. It's not interactive, but it is a video. So maybe we can also share the link to the video as well after the event.
That is planned, yeah. There are a few I've seen that are coming up about complaints and about where to go, and that, you know, it can be very confusing at next steps, particularly for students who, you know, are going through the issues. And there is a bit later on in the event where we do give, it's quite a simple guide as to where things go, so we'll hopefully pick that up for people. I mean, this is brilliant. As many of these things as you can give us is great. I'm not going to comment on every one, but you talking about the hard to reach students, Suzanne, just before, we were pulled up on this recently because we call it hard to reach students, and then we pointed out you're probably not going where students go. So it's not that they're hard to reach, you've just got it wrong. So those sort of things, it's helpful to know. Oh, an engagement week. OfS engagement week. I like that.
Maybe we should send your cat out, Julia.
Honestly, I've got 4 of them, so you know they can all take a turn.
Okay, well, see, popular suggestion. Thank you everyone for all your suggestions. We'll read through all of those and keep thinking about that. We really appreciate your input and your suggestions, and hopefully you can come out of this meeting today feeling a little bit more informed and aware of the OfS, and then that will help you to talk about that in your own university and college. And I think that is a really nice point for us to then move on to hear from a couple of members of staff in the OfS who were previously student representatives. So thank you, Julia, and I'm going to invite Charlie and Noah to join us. I'm going to hand over to you two now.
Well, hello everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today. So I was a full-time officer last year, and now I've spent the year working at the OfS, so quite a different experience, but both with the same goal of kind of advocating for the interests of students. So thinking about kind of my reflections, what I wish I knew, there is certainly a lot. So I've tried to narrow down to what I wish I knew about the OfS, and hope that's helpful. So I think the first thing is kind of following on from what's already been said about engaging with the OfS. I think that is so valuable. As student reps, you have such a powerful voice, and we really want to hear from you. So kind of, I'd really encourage you to engage, kind of joining today, joining future debriefs, student debriefs, all sorts of things, even kind of filling out an NSS form, NSS survey. That in itself is really, really important, and kind of encouraging students to do the same is really, really powerful. Secondly, I wish I kind of knew more about the requirements that the OfS places on institutions. So I'm slightly cheating here because this wasn't in place when I was a full-time officer, but our recent requirements regarding institutions to take measures to prevent and respond to harassment and sexual misconduct is really, really important, and something that I'd really encourage student reps to be involved in if they kind of have the interest and capacity to do so. So in my time as a full-time officer, I kind of worked with the university to develop consent training, and this is going to be a requirement in some form for all institutions. So that's a really valuable thing to get involved in. And I think having that student voice as a part of it would be really, really impactful. So lastly, maybe I'm biased because I'm working in the strategy team at the moment, but I do think that our strategy is really, really important. Kind of knowing what the OfS cares about and realizing how many of the OfS priorities really overlap with student rep priorities really highlights the importance of working together to empower student voices. So our strategy will be coming out, being published, as Lizzie said, around autumn time. So definitely do keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions as well. I think that's everything that I was planning on saying, but very much welcome questions at the end as well. And yeah, great to see you all. Charlie, over to you, I think.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I have got to say I'm loving the virtual energy in this audience. Julia and Julia's cat emoji gate is going to go down in OfS history. So thank you for that. So anyway, hi, I'm Charlie Leyland. I'm the head of the Student Participation Regulatory Portfolio here at the Office for Students. I'm lucky in that I lead a brilliant team that looks after strategic interventions and core regulation, all aimed at improving equality of opportunity for underrepresented and disadvantaged students, including the regulation of access and participation plans. A bit of a mouthful, but quick plug, if you haven't read your provider's APP, then do go and look at it. They're all on our website. I also co-lead one of our core regulatory teams where we oversee regulatory matters for about 80 providers and their students. And I'll be honest, I absolutely love my job. A bit about kind of, my journey. I was asked to just kind of touch on this. So I started out as a sabbatical officer like Noah at the University of York for me back in 2008. It feels like a really long time ago now. First as an academic and welfare officer, then an academic affairs officer. I then spent a little bit of time on the NUS exec as the HE zone representative. It was a time of big change in the sector, very similar to now. And I got really nerdy, really quickly about the bigger picture, and that curiosity and kind of interest has stayed with me ever since. I did a little bit of work at the QAA doing provider reviews and in the chief exec's office, and I've also worked in universities' quality assurance and enhancement teams, and then I ended up working at HEFKE, which then became the Office for Students. So I would fully recommend a career in higher education regulation. So for any fellow nerds out there, do get in touch if you want to know a little bit more or get some tips. I've been asked to come here and share some reflections and tips from my time as a SAB, especially for those of you that are kind of just stepping into those roles. So I think the first thing I would say is that you have more power and influence than you might think. So really don't underestimate it. Engage creatively, listen carefully to students, especially for those who are harder to reach for you and for us, distance learners, those living off campus, if you're at a kind of campus-based institution, those with caring responsibilities. And also remember that just because something hasn't been done before, it doesn't mean that it can't be. So be creative, put your own stamp on things, and sometimes the less corporate things are more likely to capture hearts and minds and engage students. So I would say go with your instincts, don't overcomplicate it, don't worry about not having massive budgets to be able to put towards things. Providers face really huge challenges as well as huge opportunities now more than ever. They really need your insight now to sense check, to bring fresh ideas and to help keep things on track. It might not always feel like it, although personally, I was very lucky at the University of York, but you are in partnership with your provider. And sometimes it's good to just remember that you're all on the same team trying to do the best thing for students. I think the second thing I would say is that, although that was a lot already, there's a lot of information out there to help you understand how your provider is performing. Your role isn't just to advocate, it's also to really understand your university or college's strengths and where there might be room for improvement. There's a lot of information available for you. We have dashboards like our shape and size dashboard, student outcomes dashboard, the APP dashboard, and your providers will need to publish financial accounts wants. And all of this information can be really useful for you to understand what's going on. So really don't be afraid to kind of find that, ask your provider and your wider team at your SU or guild to help understand and interpret that. It can feel a bit daunting, but yeah, from somebody who wasn't very techy, you just give it a bit of time and you'll get your head around it. You can really drill down into the outcomes for different subjects and student groups, so do use that and don't feel like you're having to start from scratch. I think the third and kind of final big tip would be that you don't need to do everything. Focus on what matters most to students, and that might not always align with your provider's priorities. I would say be really strategic with your time. Sometimes a 4-hour meeting on, library mechanics might not be the best use of your time. So set really clear objectives for yourself in line with your manifesto, liaise with the right people within your provider. It might not just be accepting, how someone's done it before and the people that they've spent most time with, and carve out time to think about how to pursue your aims and to connect with students. Also, if you do find yourself in a really long, arduous meeting, I had a good friend who used to stealthily just dab a bit of water on his eyelids to stay awake. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but it did work for him. Finally, I would say just enjoy it. It is an amazing opportunity, along with meeting minor and I think mainly minor celebs in my case, having tea with the Vice Chancellor, running massive events and all of the weird and wonderful stuff that comes with, sometimes VIP tickets to stuff going on in your city. Do keep a diary, as you'll forget all of it and it'll turn into a surreal blur. But you will work with some of the best people you may ever meet. For me, many of them are still very close friends of mine. They've gone on to do incredible things. Some of you might have the chance to, run multi-million-pound organisations and sit on the board of trustees and shape and run a range of services, influence major projects and developments. And many of these might not come to fruition until, years after you've gone, which is also quite surreal. But even if you don't have that kind of students' union or guild, you can still make a huge difference to the lives of your peers and students for years to come. Some of the things that really stayed with me and that I'm kind of most proud of was being able to help those kind of individual students and signpost them or hook them up with the right people and do that kind of really, sort of local level influencing. So don't underestimate spending your time on that stuff as well. You'll develop your skills and confidence enormously over the next kind of year or so. So lean in, be bold, and make it count and enjoy. That would be my tips for you. And I'll stop chatting away there.
Thanks both. That was really helpful. And you're both going to come back and answer some questions later on. But for now, I'm going to hand back to Julia, who's going to talk a little bit more about your role as a student representative.
For this one, this isn't about, we're not going to tell you how to do your role as a student representative, but it's how we might work together, how you might find it helpful, those sort of things. So if I can go on to the next slide. Right, so if we've got this, so we've got we sort of split this into these sections, and this is sort of when you get students coming to you with certain issues, where do you go? As I said, we have made this look quite simple, and nothing is that, most things that come to you are really complex, but we've put this together. So I think the first stage with most students is to go to their institution, and this is with any complaint that they might have. All institutions, I'm saying colleges, providers of higher education, they all have a complaints procedure. It should be available on the website, and if not, you can ask for it, and you should also get a bit of support about how to fill that in. You will have this be something that as student reps you will know about and you'll get to know about, but if you can say to students, this is where to go in the first instance, I'm going to say, because somebody said you don't always receive the help, this is the first point of call, because wherever you go next, you will be asked, have you tried your university, colleges, whatever's complaints procedures? Okay, so the next one here is the OIA, and this stands for the Office of Independent Adjudicators, and it is, I mean, everyone calls it the OIA, so you don't have to remember its name. I had to write it down because we just call it the OIA. And this offers this bit of independence. So if you're getting no luck through your complaints procedure, if it's not going anywhere, you then can get in touch with the OIA. And this is something that as reps, again, this will be your sort of next point of call. I had a look at, we work very closely with the OIA, and we're often referring between ourselves. I had a good old look on the website this week just to see, it's not fair if I'm suggesting that you go there and I've not even looked at it and tried it. So I had a good look at it this week, and it is really clear. It's got a section for students, section for student reps, section for providers. It's got clear forms that you fill in. It gives deadlines, because there are deadlines attached, and it also says I think there's a little help person. I think they were called Barry or something like that. So you can contact Barry direct, or Barry or Harry or somebody, and they'll help you through. So although it does sound quite a distant organisation, the OIA adjudicators, they've really set it out in a way that is accessible to people. So that is, if you get no luck with your institution, try the OIA. So the OfS is the next one, and this is like some of the things that Lizzie was saying earlier about what we do and what we don't do. That's really hard sometimes to understand. And we've given you 5 minutes and an hour this afternoon to try and explain that. It is hard, but the thing that we need to, right, if you remember, it's what we'll pick up is when they're not, it's against their conditions of regulation. So if they're not meeting out the conditions that they've set out, and those are, easier said than done to understand some of those things, that is when we can get involved and we can get in touch. It's if they're failing to do that, it's repeated and it's ongoing. But there's a difference between things that are to do with the conditions of regulation and general complaints, which are more of the institution and the OIA. But as I said, we all work together, so we can help you. If you're not sure, where do I take this? Just get in touch. It's something that we do. And on this last column here, this, you've had all your training, you're working in there, you're face to face. A lot of the students that you will have coming to you are struggling. They are distressed because these issues are really important. They are something that affects their daily life. It's not, it's nothing to be made. It's no small issue here. So as you will have in your institutions, signpost them to where they need to go. But there's also a lot of other resources, and I think we've got a link to some of those resources. You will already have these and you'll have been told about these, but I don't think there's any harm in repeating how much support is available to students there, and hopefully it's something that people can access to make them feel better. So my next slide, we're going to do a little quiz, and this quiz, again, it's simple. It's really we've cut it down, so there's no complexity. There's no, it could be this or that, or it could be everything. It's just an example of what I've been saying in an interactive way. So our first question is, a student has come to you angry that they've not been assigned the units they've asked for. Who should they go to? Now, I don't mind if you want to put the answers in the chat, if you just want to shout it out at home, and you can tell me how many people were right or whatever. But the answer to this one, following the slide before, is exactly that, their institution. So hopefully that was an easy starting point there. So the next question is, a student's come to you distressed at the sickness of a family member and is struggling to complete coursework as a result of this. Who should they reach out to? So it's, I think, this one is more, you can get, there's more than one answer here. However, if we give our answer, we've said the institution and the student mental health support services. So yeah, you're right here. Everyone, lots of people have said the well-being, but it is also to let your institution know, because this will be something, you know this, but it's something that they will deal with. Next slide. Right. Our next question. A student has been disputing the rejection of their extenuating circumstances with their provider and has completed their provider's complaints process. They would like to progress the complaint further. Who should they go to? And I think, again, this is one that we talked about. It's quite a simple, I like the way that I gave them the answers when I've asked the questions, and now everyone's doing really well. So yeah. If we can have the answer to that one is the OIA in the first instance. And then finally, you've noticed a series of students complaining about the quality of the course, having also raised it with their provider and not seeing change. Who should they go to? And the answer to this one is the OfS. And there's this whole thing, it's the notification procedure. Again, if a student comes into you and says, oh, I'm struggling with this and the other, and you say, oh, just fill in the notifications for OfS. It is a procedure, it is a process, but ask us, we can help. You can just, also, we can recognise something like this. So don't want to make it sound like sometimes a notification sounds quite serious and quite complicated. It is, but it shouldn't be for you to raise it, and that's what we're hoping to achieve. Now I think that is all my questions, and I think I'm handing back to Suzanne.
Thanks, Julia. That was great. That was really interesting. Okay, so now we've got some time for questions and answers. We have got about 10 minutes for this, 10 to 15 minutes. And we've had some great questions that came in before the session, and also I've been going through the chat and have noted some questions that have been there. If there's any other questions that you want us to try and answer now, put them in the chat and we can come to them. But I'm going to ask if Charlie, Noah and Julia can join me, because I'm going to ask them some different questions. Thank you. So the first question I'm going to ask is to Noah. So this was a question that we got asked in advance, but I think it's a really good question. So Noah, can you talk to us about how we can balance the expectations being placed on student representatives with the fact that this is generally an unpaid and voluntary role, particularly if you're in a small institution?
Yeah, thank you for raising this. Thank you for who submitted this question, because I think it is a really, really important one. And I hope that from the exercise you did with Julia and Julia talking through different places to go, that it's really clear that whilst being a student representative is super, super important, you are not working alone, and kind of escalating issues when you need to is really valuable and important. I also think that when it comes to those who may be full-time officers, really kind of recognising the value and empowering the voices that you hear and the feedback that you receive. And I believe that we got a question about receiving feedback, surveys, etc., that might go into in a bit more depth, but kind of continuing to use the feedback, not once, twice, more times, kind of in meetings with the university leaders, whether that's bringing that to student debrief, plenty of opportunities to kind of ensure you're getting real value out of that feedback and the student time that has gone into it. And then, yeah, I would really lastly just highlight the importance of looking after yourself. It's a incredibly rewarding and valuable role being a student rep, but it can also be tiring, and make sure to kind of check back in with yourself and ensuring that you are kind of looking after your own well-being at the same time.
Thanks, Noah. That's really helpful. So I'm going to ask Charlie a question now. So we've had a few different questions, Charlie, about student unions more generally. So a couple of people asked about how to set up a charity, how to formalise a student union. Other people were talking about their student union going through some change and that being a really difficult process, and how do you get the support to keep going on your campaigning during that work. What are your reflections on that?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a little while since I thought about this, but I would still suggest probably going to the NUS as the first port of call. Obviously, they're the kind of lead organisation supporting SUs across the UK. I believe they've got a step-by-step guide to starting an SU, and that covers everything from kind of student rep systems to democratic structures and the campaigning elements. They've also obviously then got the membership opportunities. So I think if you're trying to think about different corporate structures and how to navigate this, then I would say start with the NUS. Also talk to your provider. You know, there may be elements of their own kind of corporate structure that set out kind of plans for any kind of student unions and student representative structures, and they might be able to help you think about how those could be developed and formalized. So yeah, I think that would be my starting point. Yeah, does that answer the question, Susan?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think also if your student union is going through some change processes at the moment, then that can be really difficult. It can feel really unsettling when you're going through change. So first of all, just recognize that's normal. Everyone feels like that when they're going through change. I think trying to really stay focused on practically what do you want to achieve, and setting that out, maybe asking for some time with a senior leader in the student union or in your university or college to talk through your concerns and your worries, that can be really helpful. So yeah, just talk to people if you've got concerns, and I'm sure you'll have a great network of other colleagues in other universities and colleges who'll have similar experiences, but maybe some different experience, and you can draw on that as well. Julia, we've had a few questions in the chat and beforehand as well about the different how can student union reps really help students when they're experiencing a problem, and also maybe how can they advocate for the change they want to see. So I know you talked about this before, but can you just very briefly run through again what that kind of hierarchy of dealing with a problem would be? So if you're a student rep and someone's got a problem, what should you be doing?
Yeah, so when the first is identify what the issue is, because you'll be ahead of them on knowing a little bit more about this. So you will be able to recognise when something is like a provider is not meeting their conditions of regulation, and when it's an issue that should go to the institution. Everything, I would say, goes to the institution first. Always raise it first with the institution. Where possible, where you feel they'll get support. Look at the complaints procedure, fill it in with somebody, and then see what happens with that. Record stuff that you've got and record any outcomes that you get, because as I say, if your next step is then the OIA, they'll say, have you contacted your institution? Yes. And what have they said? This. So it's a little bit of like going through the process and collecting the information. I think you've got that. I've just had to explain the difference between an OfS complaint and a notification. They're the same thing, and this is this is just our terminology. We call these, if you like, complaints that come into OfS, we call them notifications. It can be confusing, and I think it's because it's a notification process. You are notifying us of an issue or a complaint or anything. It's notifications and complaints are the same thing, and it's when conditions of regulation aren't being met. And then Does that cover?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Julia. I think that difference is really helpful to think about. So, the notifications process, complaints to us as a regulator, are when you're telling us that you think a university or college might have breached one of our regulatory conditions. Like Julia was saying, that's different than I have a particular problem and I want a resolution for my individual problem. And that route is where it's the OIA, the university college, and then the OIA. So our notifications process doesn't give you a resolution about your individual problem. You're telling us, you're notifying us of a potential issue, and we would consider your piece of information alongside lots of other pieces of information to decide what we would do about it. Whereas when you're making a complaint about something, you want an individual resolution to your problem. You want an apology or a compensation, or you want to get the thing you haven't got generally. Whereas when you're notifying us, you're just telling us about a problem, which is really helpful when students and other people do that, but it is a different thing. So hopefully that helps as well.
I was going to say, Suzanne,
Yeah.
it's just a very brief thing, is that apologies for when we assume you know what we mean. We do always talk this language, and we're always pulled up on things like, oh, notifications, this, yeah. Always say, if you don't understand anything we've put, or if you think, just say, and you know, exactly, we can answer those things. We are guilty of it. It's a constant thing. We're being pulled up and happy to answer things like that.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. That's really important. I think I'd like now, Noah I saw has been answering in the chat a little bit. It's been a bit of a discussion going on about how to get feedback from students. So Noah, do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. So absolutely, I think there was some feedback in the chat that it can feel quite awkward to ask students for feedback through surveys. And I know that we had a pre-submitted question about how to ask for feedback, which isn't through surveys. So I had to think back to some things that I did that was quite successful and fun while I was a student representative. So the first thing that kind of was always really useful was social media, kind of using your platform where you could put polls in your story. I actually ended up creating like a WhatsApp group with those in my committee. So we would all kind of seek feedback and put it into WhatsApp group and discuss in our committee meetings. If there's a specific issue you want to kind of look into more, you can do focus groups and like listening sessions. And I did find that students are really kind of receptive to this, especially when it's something that is impacting them and they kind of want to voice it and escalate the issue. Can also do kind of events and forums. So I was the Liberation Officer, and we had something called the Liberation Forum, where you'd all kind of come together, have different topics nominated by different students, and we'd all just discuss it, and I'd get a lot of feedback through that. There's also lots of creative ways to get feedback. One of the ways I did it previously, we had a big wall in the SU, and I just put a topic at the top of the, obviously ask your SU building manager before doing this, but just put a topic at the top and lots of sticky notes, and as students walk past, they could provide their feedback, and got so much really interesting and valuable feedback that way as well. Literally could take a few seconds of someone's time. And then the last thing I wanted to say is just being around for students. Honestly, some of the best feedback I got was when I least expected it, just in the coffee shop, student bar, just around the SE building. And it's a great excuse to drink loads of coffee and drink at the student bar as well. So definitely recommend that as well. But plenty of ways of getting creative, and definitely recommend speaking to former student reps from your own institution or other institutions about that to get more ideas.
Thanks, Noah. That's great. Thank you everyone for taking part in answering those questions. That's been really great. And so we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I want to move on and talk about how you can get more involved with the OfS. This is partly because we had a pre-submitted question about this, so hopefully we're also answering that question. So as you can see here, we've got some short-term ideas that we've talked about some of these already. So we have some student-facing web pages. I'd really recommend you have a look at those. We also really welcome feedback on them. So if there's anything on that that you think isn't clear or we could be clearer on, please, or you'd like to see additional pages on different things, please do let us know. I mentioned our October student debrief on free speech, and we'll be adding a link to that later. So please do come along to that. We also mentioned our student news, so please do subscribe to that so you can stay up to date, and you can also follow us on X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also have a look at the OfS register, so that will help you see if your university or college is on there. And you can look at our conditions of registration as well, and just have a look and get to know a little bit more about our regulation. We'd be really grateful if you can share our student events and help us reach more students in the medium term as well. And in the longer term, things to keep your eye out for is if your university or college has an access and participation plan, you should be invited to be part of developing that or reviewing that. So definitely that's one to ask about in your provider to understand what they're doing around access and participation. And one of the ways to do that is to contribute to student submission. And then after Christmas, the NSS survey will launch, and we'll be asking, it'll be really great if you can help us to publicise that and encourage students to take part in that. Great, next slide, please. So these are some of the things that are coming up that we wanted to make you aware of. So our new condition on harassment and sexual misconduct it continues to be enforced. So that came into being fully from the 1st of August, and we'll also be publishing some results from our sexual misconduct survey in the autumn. So keep an eye out for that. This condition in particular, one of the questions we got that we haven't had a chance to get to was about how students' priorities shape our work. And this is an area where there was lots of student campaigning, lots of student commitment to us doing more in this space, and you can see that that has resulted in this condition of registration. So I think that's really important to say. I mentioned the student debrief event on freedom of speech, and then in the autumn we'll also be launching our new strategy as well. So that will also be something to keep an eye out for in the autumn. And I'm just checking whether or not we have a feedback survey that we might want to give to you. Great, excellent, there you go. So thank you everyone for your time today and for your engagement. It's been really great chatting to you and seeing your comments in the chat. Please do take a couple of minutes to fill out that short survey, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thanks everyone.